Hey guys, new lesson today, simplifying variable expressions. This is where we're starting to get into some pretty heavy duty algebra here. So what we're going to be looking at is talking about an expression. We're going to be looking at something like this, where if I give you something like 5x plus 8 plus 4x plus 7. Okay, and there's going to be a couple things today that they're going to ask us to do with this. One is we're going to have to be able to identify the different vocabulary parts to this expression. I have these written down below. We're going to have to figure out what terms are, what like terms are, and then these two words here, coefficients and constants. And I have a page for each one of those here, and we're going to go through and demonstrate what each one of those words mean. But definitely some vocabulary that you need to know. Terms, like terms, coefficients, and constants. And then when we're done with that, then there's going to, we have to identify those different parts to this expression. Then the last thing that they're going to do is ask us to simplify this. And that's really kind of the big key to today's lesson, is being able to take this expression here and simplify it. So we want to condense it down by combining things that we can. So, okay, let's go through the vocabulary words here. You can see I have the same expression at the top here, the 5x plus 8 plus 4x plus 7. And the first one I want to look at here is what a term is. It says terms of an expression or equation. I see I made a mistake, so I went ahead and corrected it right away. Start again. Terms of an expression or equation are the parts separated by the operations. Well, remember, our operations are the add, subtract, multiply, and divide. So here's our operations right here. I see all addition symbols. Okay, so those things are our operations. The things that are separated by those are what we call terms. So these things here that are underlined in red are what we call our terms. So what they're going to ask us to do is to simply identify these different parts. So when it asks for terms, we're looking at these different things like 5x, 8, 4x, and 7. And we're simply going to write those down, that those are the different terms of the expression. Okay? Coefficients now. Coefficients of a term with a variable is the number part of the term. So again, I'm just going to rewrite down here in ink what our expression was. It was 5x plus 8 plus 4x plus 7. Okay? Now coefficients, it says a coefficient of a term with a variable. So it's a term that has a variable. So we're only looking at these two terms right now, because those are the ones that have a variable. And it says, is the number part of the term. Well, if I look at 5x as a term here, what's the number part of the term? The 5 is. Okay? That's a 5. And the 4x, what's the number part of that term? The 4. So the coefficients in this case are just the 5 and the 4. So when they ask for coefficients, you do not write down 5x. That entire thing is not a coefficient, because we know the x is called a variable. That 5 is called the coefficient. So we're looking for just that number. And then the last thing I want to add to this, and I'm going to back up here just quite a ways, get rid of this stuff. I want to back up and show you one more time. Okay, so we know that the 5x and the 4x are the terms that we're looking at. Now when I say what the coefficient is, not only am I looking at that number, but remember I told you the sign of a number is always what's in front of it. So when I look at that 5, since there's no sign in front of the 5, I know that that is a positive 5. Okay? But I want to be careful, because when I look at the 4x here, what's the sign that's in front of the 4? That plus is going to go with it. That's what makes it a positive 4. And that's not too important when we're doing addition stuff, but as soon as we get to some subtractions in there too, that's the part that people get wrong. Okay, the sign that's in front of the number will always go with it. Okay, so we have our terms right here, the different parts of the expression. The coefficients, simply put, are the numbers that are in front of the variables. Okay? Two more parts. So again, I still have this same expression up top. Constant terms. Okay? Constant terms are just the plain old numbers, terms without a variable. Terms that do not have variables. Well, I see two of them. Okay? That sucker right there doesn't have a variable, and this guy right here doesn't have a variable. So guess what? Those things are our constant terms, just the regular old 8. And remember, it's a plus 8 because it's the sign that's in front of it, and it's a plus 7 because that sign goes with it. So it's a positive 8 and a positive 7. Okay, so those are our constant terms. And then finally our last one. So we've done terms already. I know that each of these things up here are what we call terms. Okay, all of these things here are what we call terms. Okay, all 4 of them. Now if you notice, I kind of did 2 colors up there because like terms are terms with identical variable parts. It's kind of like playing the matching game, like what things will match up. Okay, humans match with humans, dogs match with dogs, cats match with cats. Same thing here. I want to match things that have x's. Oop, I don't want that color. I want to match the things that have x's, like 5x matches with 4x. Those are kind of the same thing. They match up together. So those are what we call like terms. They are terms that go together. Just like this 8 and the 7, well, those are kind of alike. They don't have variable parts, but that's what makes them the same. Those are both just regular old numbers. So I would say also that 8 and 7 are like terms because those things go together. And that's what's going on here. We're trying to match it up. So like terms, 5x and 4x. And then finally, the 8 and the 7. And I want to show you just a couple things real quick here. I'm going to do it off to the side. Okay? Like terms. Okay? Like terms are terms with identical variable parts. So it could be 5x and 4x like I did there. I'm going to make some up here now. If I did something like 10y and 3y, those are identical variable parts because not only do they have the same y's, but they have the same exponents. And if there's no exponent shown, we should know that there's a 1 there always. Okay, so the identical variable part, and it also has the same exponent. These would also be identical variable parts. If I did something like 5xy squared, and let's partner that up with 3xy squared. Those are identical variable parts because they both have the x and they both have a y squared. The variable parts here are exactly a match. The numbers can be different. It's the variable parts that we're looking for. Okay? Things that are not like terms. I'm going to switch to red. Okay? Not like terms are going to be this. Okay? And I'll put this in this little box here. Not like terms are going to be things that don't match up, like a 5x and a 3y. Okay? Those don't match because one has an x, one has a y. Okay, something like this. What if I do 5x to the second power y, and if I do 2x y to the second power? Okay, it's a little confusing. They both have x's, they both have y's. However, they are not identical variable parts because one has an x squared, one just has an x to the first. Okay, so those are not the same. Same thing with the y's. One of them has a y to the first, one of them has a y to the second. Those are not like terms. Okay, and we can talk more about that. I'm going to get rid of all of this stuff here. Give me a second. Because now that we know what like terms are and what not like terms are, here's our next step. Going back to what we said like terms are. The 5x and the 4x, and then the 8 and the 7. What we can do now is this. This is where the simplifying part comes in. We are now going to simplify. Because the things that are like terms are the things that I can combine. I have 5x's here, and I have 4x's there. That gives me a total of 9x's. Okay? And then I can also add the other like terms, the constants. Okay? The 8 and the 7. Well, what's 8 plus 7? That's going to give me a positive 15. So by combining this, that's going to be our final step. Once you identify what the like terms are, you can combine the like terms. Okay, and that's how you simplify. Now, once I get to this point, I cannot combine the 9x and the 15 because this one has an x, this one does not. And it's as simple as that. You just have to be able to say at some point, that's as far as I can go. I can't do anything else. And that's the point that we're at, 9x plus 15. Okay, I'm going to do one here. And then I'll let you go ahead and try one. But remember, if you feel comfortable right now that you can go ahead and do it on your own, by all means do that. If you want to pause the video and try it, by all means do that. But I'm going to keep going, do the problem. So, identify the terms, like terms, constants, and coefficients, then simplify. So step number 1, we're going to identify these parts. Okay, and I've already written the 4 vocabulary words down there. So part 1 is identify the different parts. Terms. Terms are the things that are separated, okay, by the operation. So my terms are going to be y and 8 and negative 5y. Now remember, the sign has to go with it. So when I say the 5y, that negative goes with it. Same thing with this negative 3 here. Okay, and I say and negative 3. Those are what the terms are. Okay, the like terms now. Like terms are the things that match up. Okay, so terms, like terms. Well, they both have y's, and they have identical y's. Okay, so what I'm going to say here for like terms are going to be this. That is going to be a y, and that matches up with the negative 5y. And then also I have these other two things, okay, which are just the regular old numbers, the plus 8 and the minus 3. So we have the positive 8 and the negative 3 go together. And somehow I have to separate that, so that's why I put kind of those two things together, and then below it I put the other ones. I don't want to say that they're all like terms. I'm just saying that the y and the negative 5y go together, the 8 and the negative 3 go together. Okay, I'm going to kind of block this off here. So constants. Constants, remember, are just the regular old numbers, things that don't have variables. That's the 8 and that's the negative 3. Okay, those are the ones that do not have a variable attached to them. Coefficients, on the other hand, are the ones that, the numbers that do have the variables in place with them. So, this is kind of tricky. Now when I look at this, here's a variable, and it doesn't look like there's a number in front of it. However, I'm going to ask you, if I pointed to that and said, how many y's are there? You would say, well, there's one y. Exactly. This is what we call the invisible one. Okay, if there's a y there, if there's not a coefficient in front of it, there is a 1 there. Because there isn't 0 y's, there's 1 there. We can clearly see that there's 1. So coefficients, okay, we have to include that invisible 1. There is a 1 that's a coefficient, and then the other one here is in front of the y, and I have to include that negative with it. That's going to be negative 5. Okay, so there are the different parts. Okay, terms, like terms, constants, coefficients. Then finally, it says to simplify the expression. Okay, really what we're doing here is this. When you're simplifying, I'm going to block this off here. When we're simplifying, I'm going to look at this part right here. Okay, the like terms. Because really what we're doing is we're combining like terms. So when I see the y and negative 5y, remember there's an invisible 1 here. That's 1y and negative 5y. If I add those together, I'm adding those coefficients. What's 1 and negative 5? Well, it's negative 4y. Okay? And then I'm going to add the 8 and the negative 3 together. 8 plus negative 3 is going to give me a positive 5. And that is my simplified answer. It started out complicated up here. And then, working our magic, we simplified it to a condensed form, negative 4y plus 5. Okay, last one here. This is for you guys, okay? But before I tell you to pause it, there's one thing that I have to tell you, and then I'm going to set you free. When we look at this expression, okay, the very first thing that you have to do every single time that you're simplifying expressions is you have to identify if there's a distributive property in the problem. We know what distributive property is. It's this sucker right here. As soon as we see those parentheses, that's the first thing that we have to take care of. It's as if we just kind of forget about everything else for a second. Okay, if I gave you this problem, the 2 times x minus 4, you have to do that thing first. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of my ink. I see a distributive property. We have to do that first. Now remember, that means we're taking 2 times everything in the parentheses. So that means 2 times the x. I'm going to rewrite it down here. That's 2x. I have to do 2 times the minus 4. 2 times negative 4 is negative 8. And then that's my distributive property. Now I can rewrite the rest of the problem, which is plus 9x and plus 1. You absolutely have to get rid of any parentheses, distributive properties, before you start identifying terms, like terms, constants, and coefficients. That's number 1, golden rule. Get rid of any parentheses first. Now, here is the new expression that I'm going to be using when I identify. So terms, okay, the things separated by the operation. So I have a 2x is a term. I have the, remember the negative goes with the 8. I have the positive 9x, and I have the 1. Those are the terms right here. Okay? Like terms. Like terms are the things that match up, such as the 2x here and the positive 9x here. Those two things go together, so I'm going to write it down. 2x and 9x go together. But that we're not done. Those aren't the only like terms. We also have here the negative 8 and the positive 1. Those two things go together. The negative 8 and the positive 1 go together. Those are our like terms. Okay? Constants. Constants are just the regular old numbers, no variables involved. Negative 8 and 1 are the constants. Finally, we have our coefficients. Remember, the coefficients are the numbers that are directly in front of the variable. That would be a 2, and that is a positive 9x, so it would be a 2 and a positive 9 for my coefficients. So those are the different parts. Now it says to go ahead and simplify. And again, what we're really looking for is, we call it combining like terms. So again, I already have the arrows up here. I have the 2x, okay, which is like terms with the positive 9x. Well, 2x plus 9x is 11x, okay, and then just the regular old constants, these numbers, which is going to be the negative 8 and the positive 1. Negative 8 plus 1 is a negative 7, and watch how I write this, negative 7, because I know that that minus sign goes with the 7, so that's my negative 7. I cannot go any further because the 11 has an x, the negative 7 does not have an x. That's as far as we can go. We combined everything that we can. That's the end of the lesson. Okay, good luck.